Alright guys, so kind of surprised a lot of you expressed a good amount of interest in this old motor. So figured I might as well tear into it just a little bit more. But what I need to do is pull out this valve to inspect it. And how I'm going to do that, if I can possibly push it back up. Actually, I might be able to do it from there. But I've got to press up this little cap at the bottom. These things are always a pain in the ass, especially if you don't have the right tools. They do make a tool for this, and honestly I should buy it, but I very rarely have to screw with valves on these old flatheads. So I just undid it. Let's see if I can get you guys a hair closer. So I'm going to push the valve back up. Careful not to fucking take your finger off with the flywheel. Something that is kind of interesting is the exhaust push rod goes up, but it takes forever to come down. So I don't know if there's something damaged with the camshaft, but actually it's not coming down at all. But we'll try and force that back down. It is not wanting to cooperate at all. There we go. Ooh, that damn valve is seized in there. Oh, this thing's gonna be a pain in the ass. I'm gonna have to spray a bunch of WD-40 in there. I don't know how much good that's gonna do, but that thing's fucking stuck in there. I might not have a choice as far as damaging this valve goes. Might not have a choice. Well, so I got the valve out. Did have to damage it a little bit to get it out. It was seized solid in there. It doesn't matter anyways because this thing is bent. I'll show you guys what I mean. So this is a kind of a different way to do this, to check it for, you know, if it's bent or not. But just attach it to the end of a drill like you would any sort of regular drill bit and rotate it. Let's see if it'll show up in the camera. You guys can see that bend. Now, I'm not going to bother going through trying to use this particular valve if I do try and refurb this motor some more. The valve itself is obviously bent. So I figured at this point I could kind of run you guys over with some of the things that I already know off the bat that this thing needs replaced or fixed on it. First of them being it's going to need a new head gasket. Anytime you pull the heads off of these, it's always good to, you know, replace the head gasket. They're not very much money, but it's a good practice to do. It also has the rusted on bolt syndrome for the exhaust muffler. And the last one that I worked on, exactly like this one, had the same issue. So that one came out fine, but this one did not. I may be able to pull that out with a pair of channel locks, but honestly I risk breaking it in half and, you know, it being more of an impossible feat to remove it. It's also going to need a new valve, as you guys saw. And here's the underside of the head. I haven't cleaned it off yet, but it doesn't look like there is any damage done to it. But I would have to clean that off completely to make sure. I might actually have another head for one of these motors. I know that I don't have an exhaust on the carburetor and gas tank. I haven't really gone into these too much because I already kind of know the story with them. And I also know that both the pickup tubes on this thing are trashed. but the inside of the tank is very rusty. It smells like pure vinegar in there. I've never seen one that bad before. I may be able to save this tank by throwing some vinegar, a white vinegar in it, and letting it sit for a few days, and then, you know, kind of rinse and repeat as needed. I may be able to save it. That doesn't work all the time. It really does not. But the whole bottom part of the tank, I can see it. I don't know if the camera can, but it is flaky, thick, scaly rust. It is in really bad condition in there. I may have another gas tank. I may not. I'm not sure. But I can pull the carburetor off for you guys and pull the air filter hat off, and we can see some more. But you know, some of you guys were expressing a lot of interest in this thing. That's why I'm only making the video about it right now. There's also some issue with the linkages. This motor is going to need a lot of work. I'm not just saying that to say it. I'm saying it because it's true. So here's the carb, and here's what I was talking about. I kind of know just by my own personal experience that as these things age, both of these pickup tubes always need to be replaced, mainly just because of age, and especially when there's varnish fuel involved. As you guys can see, it just kind of comes off. You're not supposed to be able to pull these off that easily. I haven't screwed with this one. This one, on the other hand, I barely nudged it with my finger and I took it off. I noticed it was already loose, and it comes right out. So it's going to need 2 new pickup tubes. It might need this removed and cleaned. I may be able to save that, but it is really bad in there. And I've torn enough of these carburetors apart to know that these things do not like sitting, even more so than any sort of vertical shaft motor. They really don't like sitting for any length of time. And when you're done using these, it's always best just to drain all of the fuel out of it and run the motor off of what's left of it. They're good motors when they're looked after, but ethanol, in my honest opinion, the ethanol ruins these, the carburetors in these, a lot quicker than they do regular lawnmower engines. That's what I've noticed. And it goes without saying, but we're going to have to replace that diaphragm too. Yep. That's the inside of that. And I also wanted to point out scaly deposits that are on this thing. This carburetor's about had it. Gasket. I'll need a new one of them too. But this thing is not in good shape. I may be able to save it. I'm really not too sure about that, but next time I clip in, it's going to be of a price list of all the parts I'm going to have to replace on this thing. And you guys will see what I'm talking about. Well, so I've got somewhat of a parts list going. And this is assuming a few things. One, it's assuming that I can bring this gas tank back, which, if you look inside, it's got varnish and scaly rust all over it. It's going to take a good amount of work to bring this thing back. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. But the question is, how much time do I want to spend on it? It's going to take at least 2 to 3 rinse and repeats of white vinegar. I'm going to have to stick the pressure washer nozzle in there and spray it out each time, because that stuff's not going to come off just sloshing around white vinegar. So assuming I can fix this gas tank, And assuming I could fix the carburetor and just replace all the soft parts in it, I haven't looked up the linkage springs or anything like that, but I looked up a new diaphragm and spring, as well as a new base gasket, 2 new pickup tubes, and what else did I look up for this thing? A new air filter, because I don't have one of those on hand. New head gasket, new intake valve. Let's see, a new PCV vent valve gasket. That's the little guy that goes on to that side part right there for the PCV line. It's also not getting any spark. I just checked that. So it's probably the points and condenser that are messed up. Again, assuming it's not the coil. The coils do rarely go bad on these. However, I don't know how long this thing was sitting. I don't know if the moisture ruined the coil. It is possible, but again, this list is assuming that these 3 things, the coil, the tank, and the carb, are fine, at least after a good cleaning. But assuming that all it needs is just a new points and condenser, I wouldn't even try and sand down the points on it, to be very honest. That does work a lot of the time, but it's not something I really like to do if it's never really been done before or replaced. Granted, I do need to pull the flywheel off and pull the cover off so I can see the points and condenser, but that's going to be a different set of hassle to deal with. Also, the intake valve, I was able to find a new one of those. They are still made. That one is $15. And the inside of there is just horrible. That's going to need a good thorough cleaning. In all honesty, the best way to probably clean this motor is to, soak the entire thing in some sort of industrial strength degreaser. I mean, this thing it's definitely seen better days. And this is another thing too. This list is just for the motor. Obviously, I'm going to have to replace the belts on this thing, whether I put another motor on it or keep this one. There is going to be a few soft parts I am going to have to deal with, namely being I might have to end up replacing the throttle cable, and I'll have to do a gear case lube for the tines. So I'll have to empty out all the gear lube out of there and change that. I'm also going to have to change the oil and give this thing a proper tune-up. The total cost for all those soft parts, I haven't run these part numbers on eBay yet, but that's what we're looking at, $75, and that's before shipping. I haven't done that just yet, but probably figure about $15 for shipping. eBay could be a little cheaper. It really depends. Some of this stuff is just such a niche item, I might not be able to find some of it on eBay, but you never know. That'll add a considerable amount of time for the whole thing, just to wait on 10, 15 different parts coming from probably 10 or 15 different sellers. And that'll add some time to it, definitely. Guys, when I tell you guys that I don't think this is really going to be worth going too much further into, I'm not just saying that to say it. I mean, I've been doing this now for almost 10 years in some fashion or another, and I know well enough to know that when you can see something and you can see maybe 2 or 3 things wrong with it that are going to be really in the higher price range, you can kind of tell that it's going to go down that path. Does that happen every time? No. There's definitely, instances where, like that Honda lawnmower that I rebuilt the motor on, which was worth it for different reasons, you can kind of gauge whether it's going to be worth, rebuilding it or not. As far as this motor goes, the motor's only part of it. I mean, yeah, I could get the motor going good and fine and everything, but I'm also going to have to dump some work into the frame of this thing. I'm also assuming that the differential for the tines is good. I'm running on a lot of assumptions here, boys. I mean, even the main one, which I kind of thought yesterday after I did the video, was, you know, did this guy even rebuild this motor properly? Did he have to end up boring it out and putting in oversized rings, or did he just do a basic hone job? You know, most of the time you can get away with doing a basic hone job, but it really kind of depends on, you know, how good or bad the motor was. I also didn't rule into account, but I'm going to have to replace both of these stems here, and I'm going to have to replace that muffler more than likely. I've just not had good luck. Once a muffler starts rusting out like this, they tend to start falling apart. It's really better suited just to replace the muffler. I also didn't roll into account that it's not a huge deal, but I'm going to have to end up replacing this handle as well, and pull cord, which I've got that stuff on hand. That's not a huge deal, but it is time that you have to spend on it. You know, I'll kind of look into it a little bit more, but you know, right now I know you guys love to see me tear into this thing. I really do, and honestly, that's the only reason why I'm kind of still a little bit on the fence about it, is because it would be fun to tear into and, you know, make videos about it, definitely, but I'm also running on the assumption that I can even get it working, and I really don't like getting you guys videos of things not working. I don't know, boys. Definitely some of you guys are really outspoken with some of your thoughts and opinions, and honestly, I'm always down to hear them, but that's just kind of what I'm thinking with this. I'm thinking either throwing a good used Briggs motor on it, or, you know, if I have to, a Harbor Freight Predator motor. I've had good luck with them, and apparently one of those will work on this thing. We'll have to see. But until next time, boys, you all stay classy.